Today I'm joined by Bill McDonald. Bill was a previous coach for many years, and I'm super excited to hear what he has to share today. Bill, thank you for taking the time and joining me. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Good, of course. Let's jump right into things. Would love to hear what your family life entails.
What do you mean by now family life? What do you mean?
Do you have sons, daughters, wife?
Oh,
How long have you been married? Let's hear it. All of it.
my wife and I met in 1966 at KU on a blind date. And I called my first cousin, girl, and this on a Sunday night and asked her if there's anybody maybe there, the sorority that maybe just hanging out, not doing anything. And she mentioned my wife. And so I looked up in the Jayhawk yearbook and there she was. I thought, pretty good. So called her and got a date with her. And then it took me about 3 weeks to get another date. And kind of knew, really after a few dates, kind of knew that this was probably going to be a person that I wanted to be with, because our philosophy about life, kind of the simplicity of life, the way we were raised was very similar. She was heavy into the Methodist Church where she grew up. Her parents were at St. Paul Methodist Church over in Independence, were originators of that church. And I grew up in the Presbyterian Church in this little town of Girard, Kansas, where I grew up. And we then had a daughter in 1973, and she's now, 48? And we had a son then in 77. And everything's been, we've been very fortunate of being healthy. My daughter is a housewife. My son was also a baseball coach for 18 years, 13 years as a head coach, and then decided that he just wanted to teach. And he does a really good job of caring for people. I think that, as I'll go over a little bit about parenting, I think there's some key things in there that help them. Yes, each of them have their own different personality. Our daughter is a little more into taking care of herself. Our son's a little more dependent on mom and dad. Even though he's 40 some years old, he still needs that connection, which I needed, because I wanted my parents to be proud of me throughout my life. And I wanted to tell them what I was doing. And so, my wife was a drill team gal for 25 years and started the Golden Girl. She was the drill team gal at Shawnee Mission East, and then she came and opened Olathe South and started the Golden Girls in Olathe and did that for 14 years. And then, as she would say, she went to the dark side and went into administration. But she loved art and loved to paint, really good with pen and ink. And then kind of my life has always been, about sports, coaching, the finished product of the kid. That's kind of what I'm looking for people to give me time to work on the finished product while I have him.
Yeah, absolutely. That is awesome. Sounds like a very full and thriving family life. Certainly want to ask you some more questions about that later on here. Quickly, just share a little bit about what your coaching career, how it evolved over the years, where you spent your time, what positions you had, and all that good stuff.
Actually, I went to KU to be in the School of Business. I thought I wanted to own a business. I thought I wanted to own a sporting goods business. And then I took my second accounting class. And I might as well have been taking French, Spanish, Latin all at once. I had no idea what was going on. So my drive was to coach. And I knew that in the 7th grade. I knew that. Going and watching my little town play in the state tournament in 1953 and 1957 in basketball. and we made it to the state tournament. In 57, we made it to the semifinals. And I just said, that's really cool. I would really like to do something like that. And that was my passion and interest. And so I walked over to the PE department and saw a great man in Don Henry. And I said, I think I want to do this. I think I want to be in physical education. I want to coach, but I'm worried about the money. And he said, Bill, the more you have, the more you spend. The less you have, you got to be better with it. And that's what we all have to do.
Yeah.
And so then I had 2 high school opportunities when I left KU in 67, because it took me another year changing majors in my junior year. It took me another year, and then went to interview for jobs. And I had 2 high school possibilities, one in southern Missouri and one in northern Kansas, high school positions in basketball. And one was basketball, baseball in Missouri. But I kind of wanted to stay close to here. And so Baser Junior High had an opening for coaching and teaching physical education and social studies, which was my deal. And I was at Smitty's Hardware in downtown Overland Park. And I saw one of the assistant coaches at Shawnee Mission North, where I left Girard in 1959, going into my sophomore year in high school and went to Shawnee Mission North. And I said, Coach, I've got these 2 high school possibilities, and I've got Baser Junior High. And unbelievably, Baser Junior High, Baser, Kansas paid $200 more than the other districts, $5,600 versus $5,400. And you think $200 was significant, And he said, if I were you, he said, you did not play college basketball. You played college baseball. But he said, if I did my career all over again, I would start out in junior high, where I can make decisions on my own without interference. I have very little parental pressure in junior high. And he said, it gives you a chance to trial and error with the things you want to do. That was the greatest advice I ever had. I loved it at Baser for 3 years. I loved it. They called it junior high then. The junior high kids, we got behind each other and just loved them. And once you get junior high kids on your side, middle school kids on your side, they'll go through the wall for you. And we had real success in basketball there. And I did track, and we also had softball in the fall. And I loved, on Friday, they'd get me a sub, and I would chalk the track myself. And I was even so stupid, I built a pole vault and a high jump pit, digging it out myself, and then called a sand company in Bonner Springs, and they hauled sand in for me. And I got a fiberglass pole for my one pole vaulter in junior high. It was a waste of money. He couldn't bend the pole. He might as well bend a pole. And then I went back to KU, got my master's in 71, got a real break in that I knew through baseball, Ted Owens was the basketball coach at Kansas as a freshman coach at Kansas when I was there as a freshman. And his job as a freshman basketball coach, he had a side job of getting us jobs, athletes getting us jobs. So I sold seat backs at the KU football games, and then we would report back to him. Well, I got to know him, and then the next year he became, Dick Harp resigned, and he got to be the head basketball coach. And so I asked him if I could come and watch basketball practice. He asked me if I'd like to be on the freshman team. Big mistake on my part. I should have said yes. I said, no, I'm here to play baseball. But I should have done it because of the experience I would have had would have been incredible. So now I used to go to basketball practice and sit over on the east side and take notes about practice. So then when I went back to get my master's in 71, he asked me if I'd like to help with the freshman team. Back then, they were freshman team, and then there was a varsity.
Gotcha.
And Gail Catlett was the freshman coach. Gail went on to be the head coach at Cincinnati and West Virginia. He was the assistant coach at Kentucky. And I learned so much. So after I graduated my master's in 71, I then went to interview. I interviewed in Independence, Kansas and Mays, Kansas for the head basketball job. And the superintendent, when I walked in Hutchinson, Kansas, in Independence, Kansas, first thing he asked me, without even introducing himself, he said, do you smoke, do you drink, and what church do you go to? couldn't do that today. And then I went to Mays, and Mays said, after I interviewed for a couple hours, they said, we'd like to hire you. I said, could you give me a couple of days? And so I went back. I was sitting in the basketball office at Kansas. Had Bob Johnson, the principal at Shawnee Mission South, called. He was the vice principal at Shawnee Mission North when I was a kid. And there's an example of, as a kid, doing what's right, being a hard worker, that Reese Pollard, my football coach at Shawnee Mission North, Bob Johnson, the vice principal at Shawnee Mission North, recognized that in me when I came back to interview. And Bob Johnson offered me the job at Shawnee Mission South. So I took it at South, was assistant basketball on the sophomore team, assistant in track, for guys' sakes. I mean, I didn't know anything about track, but I studied. I had the jumps, high jump, long jump, triple jump, and I studied it the best I could.
Yeah.
And after 2 years, then baseball started in the fall of 73. And then the spring of 74 was our first year. And then did that for 28 years. And then a former player of mine who had sons at Blue Valley West, coming into Blue Valley West, he came to practice one day. He also assisted me in 1991, 92. And he owns a printing company. And he said, Coach, I've got my sons coming. And he said, would you be interested in coming to Blue Valley West? Because my wife was going there as associate principal. And I said, no, I'll finish it South. So then my wife goes to Blue Valley West. The principal from Blue Valley West is a guy named John Laurie, who's the principal at Shawnee Mission West. He was a Big 12 white hat in football. And John said, he came out to eat at our house. He said, would you be interested in the baseball job? I said, no, I'm going to finish it South. And then we drove out to West and saw the practice fields, 2 grass practice fields, a grass stadium that's just 200 yards away. And I thought, I need to do this for my family. So then I went to West for 17 years. And then my last 3 years, I retired in baseball in 15, and I helped my son for 3 years at Olathe East.
Wow. I love it. It seems like you had an awesome early start. You were able to get some pivots in along the way with different experience, and then you finished out strong there. That's awesome. How would you say your baseball career was at KU? How did that go?
That did not go well. I had the freshman team at Kansas. There was no varsity team that the freshmen could play on. It was the same as basketball. There was a freshman team.
Gotcha.
We played 2 games. That was the maximum that they allowed you to play. And wading through all the players, I got a couple of innings in the 2 games. I pitched against the varsity, and I was a strikeout guy. I threw hard, good curveball. Nobody knew anything about a changeup. A changeup was just slow your arm speed down. And so I come home and I'm playing in the Van Johnson League. I play for Cats in the Van Johnson League. And my first 2 starts were great. And then I pitched against Milgram, a guy named Don Bushorn. I was facing him. He went on and was, before the draft came in, the draft did not come in until 69, I think. And Don Bushorn, after he beat me 4-0, the next day he signed with the Kansas City Athletics. And during that game, in the 4th inning, I threw a pitch. It was 0-0 in the 4th. I threw a pitch, and something went snap in my left shoulder. So if I'm throwing into the upper 80s, the ball's coming out now like at 50, but my brain is telling me it's coming 80. I tore something in there, and nobody knew. They didn't know those things then. What you did is you got quarters and shots, which masks the pain. And so I'm now off for about 3 weeks. I come back and pitch against Guys, Potato Chips, which had a Van Johnson team, and to left field out at Satchel Paige Stadium on Paseo. At that time was about 790 feet to left field and about 240 to right field. They were taking them 728 feet on me. I mean, they were just killing me. And Lou Denny, our manager, came out and said, Bill, you're hurt, aren't you? I said, yeah, I just can't go. And so I tried to be a curveball guy and just pitch with pain. And towards the end of that season, a guy by the name of Dale Lyerla, who owned Dale's Sports in downtown Overland Park, he got a hold of all the really good players that grew up in Johnson County that were playing in the band Johnson and said, would you like to come play in a senior 3-2 team? We had an awesome team, an absolute awesome team. And so I came back and pitched for them, and, it was curveball. It was try to keep the ball down. And I laid in bed towards the end of that season, and late at night, you can get games. I could hear my Dodgers play. Dodgers have been my greatest team ever for me. And they're playing the Pirates. And Don Drysdale is pitching for the Dodgers. And he's breaking the record of 56 consecutive scoreless innings. And I'm lying in bed crying, knowing that my baseball career is done. So that's kind of where I was.
Oh, man. Injuries are a rough thing. So you mentioned you also played basketball. Was that back in high school?
High school, I played football. I was a quarterback until I broke my arm my junior year. And then my senior year, I played on defense. We had a kid named Andrews that was a tremendous quarterback as a junior, tremendous passer. So they took me and I played on defense. And I played left corner. And then I was on the kickoff. I was on the punt return, stuff. After our first game, our coach came to me and said, Bill, I'm thinking about moving you to offensive guard Monday when we tied our first game 12-12 against St. Joe Central. I come Monday and I'm fifth string fullback. So I'm playing on defense, but I'm just fifth string fullback. We go to Topeka and play, and the fullback is one of my best friends. And our coach, who was a wonderful man, he gets ticked at him. He turns around and says, McDonald, get in the game. I never came off the field from that time on. I played fullback because I could block. And okay runner. Football was my third sport. At left corner, my job, Reese Pollard, my head football coach, told me my job at left corner was to turn the play in. And that was the greatest thing for me because he never said one thing about me tackling anybody. He just said, turn the play in. And that's what I did. And, but I loved it because my buddies were there. And then I was really kind of a basketball guy and grew up in Girard and baseball. And I was 5'10" in the 8th grade. So I played inside. Well, I go to Shawnee Mission North, we got 6'4", 6'8", 6'7". On the sophomore team, I end up being a guard and I had to learn to handle the ball. And then baseball.
Very nice. Love it. What is a memory that sticks out to you from either baseball or basketball from your high school days?
Great sophomore coach. And he scared the living tar out of me. We played North Kansas City. As a sophomore, we played North Kansas City. And they had a one-arm center. And this guy destroyed us with one arm, blocking. And Coach Scharf was his name. He took us in the locker room and he said, men, I want you to sit here a minute. And he turned the lights up. I'm thinking we're going to sit here for 5-6 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And then he spoke to us. It was like God was speaking to us. And he talked to us about effort. He talked to us about attitude, teamwork, teammates. And the next day, I learned a great lesson. He ran us till we dropped. And at that time, I realized if I'm ever a coach, this is not how to make a team better. You got to go to the skill levels that they don't have and work on the skill levels. If conditioning is a problem, okay, condition. but I don't think you ever teach anybody anything by punishing running until you dropped.
Yeah.
Basketball, it was a great group of guys. We lost 10 games by 4 points or less. We were 8-12. We were 6'8", 6'7", 6'4", and then two guards, myself and Kenny Hay, were 5'10", 5'8". He was 5'8", and we just couldn't get over the hump, and it was lack of attention to detail. That's what I learned from watching me in basketball. But our coach was a great defensive coach, and we played great defense. We just didn't score very well.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great experience. Great experience.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit about your playing days. Would love to shift the conversation a little bit and just kind of talk to you about some life experience. As you think back to the various hats you wore as a coach, as a teacher, as a family man, being a husband and a father, within all of that, what was something that was kind of like a driving force, like the why behind you putting forth your best effort to everything that you did?
Why was I like that?
Yeah. What was driving you?
It always, my life centers around going back to my dad. My dad, he was kind, tough, a disciplinarian, but discipline is not physical punishment. Discipline is getting everybody on the same page, getting everybody to see things that the group needs to see. So my dad, when things were going wrong in our family with my two sisters, myself, or my mom and dad are upset with us, it was a family meeting, and my dad would lay things out to us about how things were going to go. And so my dad was always the driving force in teaching me how to be a team player. And that stuck with me forever. My dad showed me how to be a family man, because nobody could love their kids more than my dad loved us. And to a fault, my dad never asked for anything at Christmas or any time, birthdays. It was always about us as kids. And looking at my mom and dad make it, with my dad a railroad worker and my mom a school teacher, showed me how to get to be together, how to do things. We would take picnics together, Andrew. We'd go to Joplin and get a big black diamond watermelon, which was a dark green watermelon, and mom would do chicken. And it was family. It's Friday night, people come into our house after the games for hot chocolate and a snack. In Girard, you go to all the games, football, basketball. And in my house, I think of my house as warm. It's my mom baking. It's my mom, cooking. It's my dad taking me after every game I played. My dad never criticized a coach. Like I told you before, Andrew, he never criticized a coach. He never criticized a player, even the player that may have been playing ahead of me or played more than I did. My dad would sit me down in the kitchen, and we had a chalkboard, and my dad would go over how I can improve as a teammate, not things that the coach did wrong or players did wrong. And my dad always said, it's up to me to get it done. It's not the coach's job. It's your job, Bill, to please the coach. And a traumatic thing happened to me coming from when you're a freshman at Girard. If you have any athletic skills, school of 200 and some kids, you're going to play. Mm-hmm. Well, I played a little varsity as a freshman. And now we come up to Shawnee Mission North. There's 135 kids out that are just sophomores out for football. Wow. Not juniors and seniors, just sophomores.
Yeah, wow.
And there's 11 quarterbacks, and old Bill's number 11. And so I'm dragging my clothes, my football gear behind me, walking down Johnson Drive, going to Johnson Drive in Antioch, where our house was. And I flip my dirty football stuff down on the floor and walk in, and Dad said, "What's the matter?" I said, Dad, there's 11 quarterbacks. I'm number 11. I can't get noticed. And he said to me, Bill, when they walk, you run. What it was that changed everything with me as a person, a coach. When they walk, you run. He's saying, show the coach that you deserve to be 11, 6, whatever. I went all the way to number 1, by doing that and showing that I wanted to play. And same thing happened my junior year in basketball. Having a good JV season, get to suit up a little bit for the varsity. And I'm sitting on the bench, we're playing Raytown, and there's a fight during the game, and 2 of our people get kicked out. So now there's 10 of us left. 9 got to play. Bill didn't get to play. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting on the bench like this. My dad, when we got home, what's the matter? Everybody getting but me. He said, Bill, you've not proven to the coach that you're worthy or you have the trust of the coach to play. And so that just always stuck with me, that it is my job to prove to the kids, it's my job. If you're not getting it, that's my fault as a coach. If you're not getting it, it's my fault. And I've got to do something about that. Either my communication's got to change with that individual. I'm not communicating well enough to him. Because I don't like to look over at first base in the 6th inning when we got a score. And I see Andrew at first base and Andrew doesn't know what we're doing. That's my fault. That's not your fault. That's my fault. So it all goes back to my dad. I had something here talking about my dad. My dad said something to me one time. He said, Bill, always think of the other guy. He said, stop thinking so much about yourself and think about how you can help others. Secondly, when I was a coach, he said, the other guy wants to win just as much as you do, Bill. When he defeats you, you have to honor him. And those just stuck with me forever. That think when you're of your wife, quit thinking about you, or might be thinking about me, and think about how I can lend myself to them. And my dad gave that to me.
Wow. Sounds like your dad was an amazing influence in so many ways. I did a Bible study a while back. It was called Every Man a Warrior. And they kind of had 3 biblical principles for raising children. And it was specific to the father speaking to his kids. And I'll just read those 3 real quick because it sounds exactly like what your dad was doing. It says, from Ephesians 6:4, it is the father's God-given responsibility to train his children. Proverbs 17:6, children get their self-image from what they believe dad thinks about them. And then Proverbs 18:21, the words spoken to a child will determine their destiny. It sounds like he knew his tongue had the power of life and death, and he chose to speak life into you. He chose when to speak up, when to hold back, when to encourage you to press in. And it sounded like it affected you in a lot of ways. So very cool that your dad was that intentional. It's awesome.
And it hurts me that a lot of guys did not have that.
Yeah.
A lot of kids didn't have that. And my mom, I asked my mom when my dad passed, because when we'd have family meetings, mom wouldn't say anything. She just would sit there and listen. Mm-hmm. And when dad and I would talk, she'd sit there and listen. And I asked mom, we took her to Colorado a few months after my dad passed. I said to mom, why did you never speak? Why did you just sit there? Because she said, I love to listen to your dad talk, and I love to listen to you and your dad talk. So it was, mom was she was a different force, with us. She was she was the person. I could talk to my dad, but I could really talk to my mom, about things. Yeah. And it was a great combination, and we didn't have anything. My bedroom was the corner of my parents' bedroom on a roller-away bed and a Zenith radio, and I thought I was safe. I was warm. I was comfortable, Yeah.
So that is so awesome. That's great. Over the years, maybe it's some current routines you have, maybe on a weekly or daily basis, or maybe if you think back over the years, maybe different routines that you had that kind of helped your week to week ultimately strengthen your impact. What would some of those routines be? What comes to mind?
Well, I am a person of routine, and the routine of our men's group has been really significant for me the last 11 years. And preparing for that, talking for that is a part of the routine. But during my times as a coach, it was a routine of I worked out at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was at school by 6:30. We usually a couple times a week we had a men's group that met in the morning and did some Bible study. Baseball, I was a routine guy. I mean, you could bank this is going to happen in practice. It's going to be stretching. We do our conditioning before we practice. It's going to be defense. It's going to be offense. It's going to be situational hitting. It's going to be character lessons at the end of practice of maybe what's happened during practice. You know, at home here, it's getting up in the morning and it's taking care of my wife. We have not done in the last year, we used to do a Bible study, and we have not done that because of some issues kind of with my wife that I take care of in the morning. And so we do that. I kind of fashion my day to get my 4-mile walk in, you know, that I've got a certain time that I've got a time frame that I want to get it in. I enjoy every day. My wife and I have a routine of usually taking a drive and going out to look at out south, or drive down to Lacine south, or drive up past St. Joe to kind of talk, Andrew, about our life, about our kids, you know, what we did well, you know, with raising our kids, when you look back on, when you have children, you look back on what you could have done better. And that's, as I've expressed to you before, of could have done a better job of, as they were growing up, of being the lead in the household, of presenting Jesus to them. I could have done better with that. But I think, you know, probably my wife's life has always been centered around the Lord. And, you know, we do a lot of praying together. So that's kind of our, we just enjoy each other every day. You know, I don't say, geez, you know, what can I do? Or, well, Bill, why don't you leave to get away from a while? You know, we don't ever feel that way. You know, we just enjoy being with each other. 52 years is a long time. I mean, we've known each other for 54 years. And it was yesterday.
Wow. That is awesome. That is rich. So I had 2 questions for you. One about marriage, and let's go ahead and start with that. What would you say is some key marriage advice you would give from that 52 years of being married?
You know, I think when you're looking for a wife, and then we could go on for that, but I think your values have to match up. You know, there used to be I taught with a gal at Chimes of South named Susie Troop, that she lives in Omaha, Nebraska now. And Susie developed a class of marriage and counseling. And so she would have faculty members come in and talk about their dating life. What were you looking for in a spouse? And it's 30 girls in there. They're all girls. And I tried to emphasize to the girls, one of the things you have to look for is that guy in high school that you're enamored with, that can really shoot a basketball, can run 100 yards, can throw a baseball hard, gets base hits all the time. That's not the guy. You need to find the guy that is kind. If that's that guy that does those things and is kind and considerate and is interested in you, not talking about yourself, but interested in you, that's the guy to kind of hone in on. And I tried to emphasize to him, if you think you're going to change the guy you marry and he drops his underwear at the dresser floor and expects you to pick him up, he's not going to change from that. You know, he's going to keep doing that. So look for the person that is considerate of other people, is interested. Always think of the other guy. You know, my dad would try to emphasize to me, think of the other guy. And so I think taking care of my wife's needs, I think one of the things, the value system that you have, look at the value system that girl has versus you. For example, if something bothers you about that she smokes, you know, then you're not going to change that, you know? So I think probably that there be faith-based, because there's going to be issues in families and marriage. There's going to be issues. And because of me being raised in the household I was raised in, Andrew, when issues happen, they don't faze me because I had the strength of my mom and dad. They're gone, but I have the peace and the strength when they're gone of listening to what they would have done. I look at how my dad treated my mom. That helps solidify that this is in marriage somebody. Now you're going to have to love that wife differently than your dad loved your mom because she's a different woman. And you have to recognize that. Love her the way she needs to be loved is important. Next, which I'm not real good with this. I am much better than I was 10 years ago. Women want you to listen. They don't necessarily want you to solve. They'll ask you for the time that they want you to solve. Just listen to them. And I think we were talking about this at the men's group the other night. Having always all my life tried to solve issues for kids. Kids would come in with a problem and they would say a sentence or two. And in my mind, okay, I got an answer. So I start giving them the answer.
Yeah.
And then who talks most of the time, as you've been with me? Who talks most of the time? Me. Versus let them talk, about what they want to say. I think in a marriage, just being a good listener, being caring, having the same values that close to the same values they have, that will help you in raising your children.
Yeah.
That the value system is the same.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same. And she was raised in a very similar type household as I was raised in, and the value system and the kindness and the goodness of particularly her dad.
Yeah.
Good person.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you for sharing those very practical things and very useful for sure. Now shifting back to parenting, I know you mentioned that you maybe wish you had shown Jesus to your kids a little bit differently. If you could go back and do it all over again, what might that look like? What changes would you make? How would you do that from a practical standpoint?
From a practical standpoint of introducing the Bible to them and having family time to get into the Bible, because a feel good is to go to church. But if you just go to church, it's not going to work, and so in the time you have raising them, to me, there is a distinct way you raise them. And that's being present with them. And that's talking to them at a young age. And I did that, and my wife did that. And so I've got their attention because I would go to bed with them every night and tell them a story. Kids at the table at dinner won't talk about how school was, friends, but lie in bed and look at the ceiling. They'll tell you everything. From that, at 10, 16, 28, 45, they'll talk to you about their issues. They may not let you in on the entire picture, but they will call you about issues they have. At those times, Andrew, where I had them totally captured in telling them a story, it was a Calico Bill story, I needed to introduce more biblical reading and talking about why are you saved?
Yeah.
There's going to be failure in your life, kids. I talked about it in another way of how to overcome it. And I didn't talk about overcoming it with Jesus. Because most of my life, until 10 years ago, I was a lonely person. I was a guy that was kind of a loner. As a coach, I got in my truck here in Olathe and I drove to Shawnee Mission South. I would drift off in thinking about my kids, thinking about coaching, thinking about my teaching. And Dan Diebel, our minister at Heartland, Dan basically relaxed me about Jesus, that he was a man. And I needed to explain that to my kids because I think we're afraid of Jesus, trying to be formal with Jesus versus just tell Jesus. He already knows. Just tell Jesus what is on your mind and confess yourself, to him. see, I needed to throw all that, to my kids to give them inner peace.
Yeah.
Because I have that inner peace, and that inner peace comes from what my parents gave me and through Jesus, coupling with him. And so, that's where I let the kids down. That I see them with conflict today. I see them frustrated sometimes in their life, their married life, their life with their kids. And today, when I'm frustrated and I'm in my vehicle, Jesus is in the passenger seat with me, and I just talk to him, and it's very rewarding to do that. So that's kind of where I could have done better with my children. I mean, I talk to them always, about effort and being kind and respectful, which is really important to me. That I tried to in baseball and try to get across the kids in high school as a coach, but to my kids too. And if you can point to things in the Bible that they can go to when stressful times occur, that's a huge relief, and that's where I feel.
Appreciate the honesty. Thank you for sharing there. That's definitely valuable. And I think about Proverbs 22:6 says, "Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it." So as you just mentioned there at the end, you think about where your kids currently are and where might they have been, should they have been shown Jesus a little bit more, however you want to phrase it, when they were younger. So
because it carries over, Andrew, it carries over then to their children. Their children carry to the next children, to their children, and I went to church. I didn't learn the Bible in Sunday school. I didn't, I got my Sunday school pins, my yearly Sunday school pins. But Mrs. Crawford, I didn't listen enough to Mrs. Crawford to get what I needed to get, from her about studying Jesus throughout your life. And Dan helped me a great deal, with that, of understanding a little bit more about Jesus. And I just think that because I'm so much into truthfulness and honesty, and we all fail, but I come back to that. And I just think Psalms, David is always apologizing basically for his actions, but he does preach truthfulness, and I think Proverbs, I think Psalms, I think Acts and Romans have been great about living your life. If you want a pathway how to live your life, there are things to read there in those.
Absolutely. And would love for you to expand on even that a little bit more. Like, when did that click for you? So obviously you knew that, religion was a thing, you knew of God and Jesus, but it's different when it becomes an intimate personal thing where you really truly know and feel that you are saved by grace through faith. When did that click for you?
10 years ago, where I grew up in the little town, the Presbyterian Church, our pastor talked to us as kids a great deal about be good. And so I didn't talk to me about how I was saved, that if I believe through faith that Jesus is my Savior, I am saved. I believed in good deeds, so I tried to be good. And then people around the square in Girard, I'd be with my dad, I was always with my dad, they'd say, Bob, we'd like to have a boy just like Bill. They'd see that in front of me. And so, okay, I got to do more good. Mm-hmm. So I don't make mistakes because I'm good. And then 10 years ago, I got into this men's group when Heartland was at 87th Lamar. And I was overwhelmed. I was stunned at the issues men had, that I have some of those issues. And so through Mark Murfield and Jay Feldheim, who's now passed, Doug McFarland. Those three men kind of took me under their wings and really got me into studying the Bible more. And I'm still a failure with it. I could do better with it, but they were a tremendous help 10 years ago of getting me on a path to peace. I guess I would say peace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's amazing what accountability, encouragement, and community can all come together and do. So that's awesome. You had those people in your life. I've got a couple more questions for you. So you kind of gave some very practical advice for parenting, for marriage. What would be your practical advice for coaching? Like, how can coaches make a transformational impact on their athletes? What are some things, maybe activities, principles, et cetera, that they can do and incorporate in their programs?
The number one thing you always do with your kids is lead them with dignity. You know, you can be disgusted with them, you can be firm with them, but leave them at that moment. And if you feel when you go home that you've not left them in that moment, then the next day, that's the first thing you do at practice is get with them and leave them with dignity. I think that I'm going to talk about a couple other things here, but I think one, you know, just as a coach, be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else, and believe in yourself. What you learn, believe in that, and if it doesn't feel right, continue to learn from that. And I think to be fair to the kids, if you're a coach, don't complain about them or other coaches. Go learn everything you can about the sport you're coaching. Have a passion for that. Be attentive to detail, and do not accept less from them if they don't give you detail. So that plugs me in. I'm going to then get with them one-on-one and give them the detail. Mm-hmm. I think never as a coach, now I'm going to talk about some positives here, but never as a coach, let a player dictate the pace that you want to play and or practice. Good athlete, good player. Do not accept less effort from him because he's skilled. Don't accept less effort from him. No, this is what you're gonna have to do. Coaches many times say, I was talking to Dayton Moore and I mentioned this to him. A lot of times the high school coach says, there's no way you're gonna play in college acting like that. No, you as a high school coach need to say, there's no way you're playing here for me that way. So therefore, then I got to plug into him and I got to show him the vision of what I'm looking for, of how you do play here. Yeah. Okay, positives. Always go to the good things that he's doing before you bring up the bad things that he's doing. And make those things, a pitcher comes off and he can't throw strikes. Sit down next to him. Just sit there. Say to him, you know, your fastball, I'm not kidding, your fastball looks as good as it's looked in days. Your breaking ball will come in the third inning. See, I never said, come on, throw strikes. Mm-hmm. This is what you got. It's got to be a plan. Okay. The positivity things, this is magic. This is magic, I think. And coaches do it. You got to circle up. We would meet into the garage. At South, it was called the Room, capital ROOM. At West, it was the Garage, capital G. It was the garage. Okay. We would get in a circle. They had to tell the person on the right or left, whichever way we were going to go around, what they liked the most about them. And I always lead off with, as a person. It's more important what they are as a person than a player. Yeah. What's the greatest thing they like about them as a person? And each guy goes around and does that. Then they tell me, they tell the group, what's the best thing they like about them as a player? You can take the worst kid, you can take 18 kids, you can take number 18, and you can tell him there's something good about what he does, good spin on his breaking ball, you know, good low strikes, something you can tell him. Okay, from that, then my core leaders would speak. We had 4 core leaders, and the core was respect, responsibility, integrity, servitude, leadership, sportsmanship. Okay. Those 5 things were presented to the core leaders by me. The core leaders then would speak to the players about that. During practice, Andrew, you're on the mound. Ball hit to the right side, you don't cover. It's not McDonald saying, Andrew, you need to get there. It's the core leader on the infield saying, come on, Andrew, you can get there. See, there's a different way to say it. And if the player takes over, positive things will happen on your team. Sometimes the core leader must stand up and speak to the team. Okay, positive running. We had a 3-man group, stationary guy, a person in the middle. The person in the middle, you say, go, got to run and touch this guy. Got to turn and come back and touch that guy. He keeps going back and forth until he can't go anymore. He then will run towards one of the 2 and say, can you help me? See, that humbles himself to the team, and the team says, yes, I will. They tell him, yes, I will.
Yeah.
Then in our sprint work, this is a kid, I'm always at the back third in basketball, or I'm trying to get up, and our coach would say, Bill Carnival, if you finish first twice, you're out. That's no hope for me. I'm never going to finish first unless if 18 guys were down to 2 guys, yeah, I might. We would have, if you finish last twice, you get to set out. Not finish first if you finish last. You think, well, that won't work. Kids will die not to be last. So that was a positivity, to them. So I think there's a lot of ways that you can get things across to them and leave them with dignity and leave them with hope, HOPE.
Really good stuff. Thank you for sharing all that. That's like 10 nuggets of practical applications. That'll go a long way. So thank you. Last thing I want to touch on with you, I know we've talked about it before, just the concept of what it means to be a man. How would you respond to that? What have you learned over the years with that whole concept?
Yeah, I fought with that. Do we have a couple minutes?
Yeah.
I fought with that for a long time. And everything kind of came fruition to me within a matter of a few years. I had a because really I was kind of searching for that even in Girard, of going to the church. It's kind of my testament, actually. I had a right-handed pitcher on the mound against Olathe North, and he can't throw strikes. And it's not the umpire's fault. He can't throw strikes. He's around the plate, but he's not getting strikes. And he swears. Well, in our program, that didn't happen. Because in my household as a kid, you didn't swear. Mom and dad, you didn't swear. If I had guys playing basketball with me on the backyard and somebody would swear, they're gone. You got to go home. And that just stuck with me. Okay, so he drops a bad word on the mound towards the umpire. And so I walk out to the mound and I said, we're going to leave the mound. And I brought somebody else in to pitch. And he dabs in the stands. And I said, Mister, could I see you a minute? So he comes over and said, you need to take Mike home. And when Mike wants to come back and discuss about being a respectful person, we'll talk about him coming back on the team. Okay, the next day he shows up. And the dad and Mike come up. Mike ended up coaching some of my summer teams after I removed him. Mike and the dad come up, and the dad says, Bill, I'm going to let you work it out with him, which is okay, because he's a man now. He's 16. And I said to him, sir, at that time I was 56 maybe. I said, I'm 55, 56 years old. I'm still trying to figure that out as to what is a man.
Yeah.
Okay, so not long after that, because Rob Hull's involved in all of this, Rob says that Craig McIlvain is going to give at Heartland, and I had him at South. I had both McIlvain boys at South as students. That he's going to give a talk on what it means to be a man. Okay, so I show up on Sunday at 87th Lamar, and he gives a wonderful sermon that eventually all comes down to this one thing. And he said, how many of you men have a best friend? And spattering raised their hand. And he said, how many of you have a friend that you can tell your most intimate details to? I'm not sure any man raised their hand. Now, women would have their hands flying all over the place if they do.
Yeah.
I went back the next day to school, and I was walking out to the baseball field with our principal, and he's a white hat in the Big 12, so he's around men all the time. I said, John, do you have a best friend, a man best friend? No, I don't. You know, and you could walk everywhere and ask a man, does he have a man friend that he can talk to? At that time, I have Rob, and now I'm getting into the men's group of men, and men are sharing. And I'm a sharer. I don't have a trouble saying things that I've done wrong and asking for forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
To become a man is to know Jesus Christ. That's what is becoming a man. And when you walk that life, you will get closer to being a man. And espousing yourself, saying over and over that he is my savior, you know, and I believe, you know, by my faith that he is my savior. And following laws, doing good deeds is not the answer. It's by faith. And so I found my answer. And that's when Jesus Christ moved next to me in the truck and started riding in the passenger seat with me, is that he was talking to me about being a man, you know, of how I can do this through faith, through Bible, you have to read. You just have to read. And at my age, sometimes I forget, you know, I don't remember as well verses that I want to remember. So I try to write things down. Yeah. And I want to talk to my son so much about that. And I get into a little bit, and it doesn't go far enough for me. Mm-hmm. Because usually to bring a man to God, maybe bring a person to God, usually sometimes traumatic things have to happen in their life until they say, this is what I got to do.
Yeah, that's powerful definition of what it means to be a man. I know, didn't you also read, is it John Eldridge's book?
John Eldridge helped me a great deal as a coach. And I don't know anybody ever listens to these or sees these, but every man should pick up the book Fathered by God by John Eldridge, because it teaches you, it describes for you how to raise a son. You could do it daughter-wise too, but how to raise a son. Yeah. The son wants adventure. He wants adventure with his dad. It takes you through the 6 phases of raising to a man. It's child. You're a child first. When you get into middle school, before you get into high school, you're a cowboy. In high school, and certainly after that, as you enter college or work, you're a warrior. From there, you become a lover. From there, you become a father, and from there, you become a sage. And you know, we need sages to talk to men, younger men, because the world is consuming younger men. The world is consuming them. That this is a way life should be. And that's the significance of Dayton Moore with the Royals. The character development that he brings to the Royals and the type of people that he tries to bring to play for the Royals is outstanding. You could read all kinds of articles you're going to read in sports, and somebody's going to refer out of probably 10 readings, probably 5 or 6 of those going to say, I respect Dayton Moore. Dayton Moore did this for me. You know, so as I said before, you have the 6 stages that everybody needs to read as a man. Yeah. And I don't know whether I should say this or not, but Eldridge says probably a woman can't do it. Now, sometimes she's thrust in that situation where she has to do it. But there's where the coach comes in. The coach may have to be the mentor. Somebody, FCA may have to be the mentor. Somebody with the FCA may have to be the mentor in that group. that can help. One of my assistant coaches for 4 years, Kevin Rosas, and he now lives in Beloit, Kansas. He came from Beloit. He assisted me for 4 years here. His wife's a doctor. They went back to Beloit 22 years ago. He has started in Beloit a youth group, and I went out there a year ago on a Wednesday to spend that Wednesday evening with the kids. We've got kids coming in there that single parent, drug parents, those kids are seeking things. And some of them can't speak or don't want to speak. They're afraid to speak. And to saunter up to them, Andrew, put your arm around them and see just that little smile on their face. They don't say anything, but they know somebody's touching them. That's magnificent.
Yeah.
So Eldridge can really help. And I emphasize young men are looking for adventure with their dads. Adventure with my dad was going fishing. Adventure with my dad was playing catch. It wasn't catch. It's talking about life. It's talking about how to be a better person. With my son, it was going off and hiking in the mountains in Colorado. It was baseball. It was football. It was basketball. It was talking about life with him while I was involved with him.
Yeah.
And that's part of being present. You know, not showing up when the grades are bad at school.
Yeah. Right.
But going through with them, how they can work each night at home. How can they be better prepared by work at home and make sure they're doing it at home? And my dad was a Ronald Reagan. Love you, but verify. Every time that I came home, I did nothing. He would give me the biggest hug, 12 midnight, 12:30. Bill, how you doing? Ask him, like, why did you do this? And I was smelling you just to see if anything was going on. So anyway, I was very fortunate to have the parents I had, 2 great sisters.
Yeah.
You know, lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Bill, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the insight. Really appreciate it. Good talking with you. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, Andrew, thank you so much.